Ladies and gentlemen, if I could ask everyone to please take your seats, we'll get started with the program. Thank you, everybody. For those of you who are here in the room, welcome back. As I said, we're going to get the program started. And for those of you watching from home, welcome. It's nice to have you joining us for the 9th annual Living the Dream dinner. So let's give a warm welcome to those joining us from home. Thank you. We wish you were here with us, but we're delighted you're joining us. Before we go into the program, I would like to ask all of you in the room to do me a favor. Please give a round of applause to all those who are serving and preparing our meal for us tonight. As we all know, it's been a difficult time in the hospitality industry for the last couple of years, so please keep showing your appreciation to those who are helping us enjoy our meal tonight. If you're joining us virtually, please connect with each other on the chat function on your screen. It's a great way to comment on tonight's event. Who knows, you might even find an old chum from school, so please be interactive so you can feel like you're connecting with others. For me, it's been wonderful to reconnect tonight with some friends from the Sisters of St. Joseph. It was wonderful to get to know so many of the sisters and to see the dedication they have to Regis College. It was wonderful. They're awesome. And I should say it's great to see my old colleagues, my former colleagues. You're not old at all. You look fabulous. I know the last couple of years haven't been hard or anything. You look just totally like you've been through nothing. So it's great to see you all. And I know you all appreciate, as I do, everything the sisters do for Regis. And you have the alumni weekend coming up this weekend to celebrate all those who have gone on to do great things at yet one of the many fabulous Sisters of St. Joseph sponsored institutions. All those ripple effects, these incredible students and the lives they lead, grounded in the values of the sisters. So it's pretty extraordinary, and I've witnessed it firsthand, and it's just amazing. And what I think is amazing about the sisters is they never seem to age. They are the most energetic, most enthusiastic, spirited group of women, right? And they read the times and they adjust with the times. They get it, which is really awesome. It's just really great to see how they connect with students of all ages because they listen and they learn. It's really wonderful to see. They are so passionate about reaching out to the dear neighbor without distinction. It includes all of our neighbors, immigrants in need of assistance and education. People living on the fringes of society are not left out by these sisters. All those who the sisters have educated throughout the years who are searching for spirituality and for support, they have always provided it, and they have many grateful people and families because of that. So I'd like to take a moment to thank all of the sisters who are watching virtually. Hi. And to all those in the room. You've done so much for so many people for 150 years. Sisters, stand up. Stand up, sisters. Let's see you. Let's applaud you. Let's celebrate you. Never lose that energy. Never lose that enthusiasm. We need your goodness. Thank you. It's now my pleasure to introduce the head honcho. The lady in charge, the president of the Sisters of St. Joseph, Sister Lee Hogan. Please welcome her.
Well, good evening, friends. Good evening. Welcome to everyone here in the hall, as well as to our viewing audience. Thank you so much for your presence with us this evening. Your generous support for our varied ministerial works, as well as your providing for our elderly retired sisters, is something for which we are forever grateful. For nearly 150 years, since the first Sisters of St. Joseph arrived in Boston in 1873 to open a parish school, we have been reaching out to the dear neighbor. As times have changed and new needs have arisen, they have brought us to new opportunities for ministry. In all cases, we seek to reach out to the dear neighbor without distinction, bringing the message of God's unifying love to each one we meet. I mentioned 1873, our founding here in Boston. Next year, 2023, we will celebrate our sesquicentennial, an anniversary to be held in Boston. I believe that Kelly will tell you the date when we will reconvene right here for that event. In a short video in just a few minutes, you will see that our sisters have and continue to minister in a rich variety of ways. You'll meet three sisters whose lives capture some of that variety. Sister Maureen Doherty, Sister Marie-Therese Martin, and Sister Carlotta Gilardi will each share a glimpse into some of the aspects of their own ministerial lives. In addition, there are dozens of sisters here tonight, perhaps some at your table. Each one, I'm sure, would be happy to tell you how she is engaged in ministry for the dear neighbor in these days. As we continue on with our ministries, you are our partners, our silent partners in these works, as well as in the care of our retired elder sisters. And you are the recipients of many daily prayers of those sisters. From our earliest days as members of the congregation, we learned the importance of the supporters, the importance of your presence and your predecessors' presence to our works. You and they have been our silent partners, enabling the sisters to do the work, the ministry that they have done and continue to do. So tonight, we pray that our loving God will shower an abundance of blessings upon you, your families, and your work. In the name of all Sisters of St. Joseph, I express our immense gratitude to you for your generous partnering with us. Thank you. And now, to introduce tonight's Dear Neighbor Award recipient, I am happy to introduce the Honorable Regina Quinlan Doherty, who was the recipient of last year's Dear Neighbor Award at our virtual event. And tonight, she will introduce our honoree, Rosemary. So please welcome Regina Quinlan Doherty.
I made it. See? It's a good group. And it's a special night, and I'm pleased to be able to introduce Rosemary Scapiccio to you as the next Dear Neighbor Award winner. Thanks. Thank you. You know, that term, the dear neighbor, is quaint. It sounds so nice, but it really isn't quaint. That's an understatement of the year. It goes back to 1650, when Father Mattia told the first sisters that they were to go out into the city where they were and look for people in need, and care for them and serve them, because they were the dear neighbor. That concept has been a charism of the community since then, and it's critical that they carry it through as times change. The Rosemary Scapiccio is an appropriate honoree for this particular award. When we were talking about who should receive it, Dennis Lennon mentioned that he had just watched a movie or a series called Trial 4. Have any of you seen it? See? You might binge on it, actually. And it is a series that shows Rosemary Scapiccio representing one Sean Ellis. Sean Ellis was a young man who was convicted of murder and spent 22 years in jail for a crime he says he did not commit, and ultimately she was able to get him honored by having a new trial ordered, which is very rare, by the way. And in fact, Judge Carol Ball, who was here, was the judge that issued that order. In the next Netflix series, which involves about eight different segments, which I've watched over the last weekend, one after another, you see how complex it was. And you also see that Rosemary is a very capable lawyer, a very diligent lawyer, but she's more than that. She has a fierce and intense commitment to fairness and justice, and to representing her clients without distinction, whether they're private clients or clients for whom she's been appointed, giving all of her best in order to ensure that what they receive is a fair trial. It's a process she didn't just do in the one case that we talked about in the movie, that was talked about in the movie. She's also done it in many, many others. In fact, she had one that ended this week, and it was a trial up in Springfield, which almost would have delayed her coming here. But fortunately, she got her not guilty on Monday. According to the film, Sean Ellis had been in jail for some 18 years when he saw her on TV. And he knew this lady could help him. And they got in touch with each other. And she said to him, "I can't do it, I'm too busy." He said, "I'll wait." And she said, "But I have so many cases, just don't count on it. And I don't even know if I'll take your case until I meet you. I'll wait." He waited, and then she worked another 8 years on his case, and ultimately obtained won the motion for a new trial before Judge Ball. I particularly enjoyed watching that, because Judge Ball was sitting in the courtroom where I sat, with the court officers that I had, and with the clerk that I had, and it was a very familiar sight. You will see from what you hear tonight, and from that film if you've watched it, which I hope you will, that Rosemary is really an amazing woman. She graduated from Suffolk University and then Suffolk University Law School and went into private practice. And unlike most people who go into practice, she started out very soon in her career as a sole practitioner. I kind of identified with that because I was as well. And that is a very difficult role because you're starting in a firm that you are it. You are the one who is responsible for making sure all that comes through is handled and handled according to justice. And I was told by Margaret, her sister who works in her office, who guards her office, who protects her sister, I was told by her that you never knew whether a client was a private client, meaning a paying client, or whether it was somebody for whom she had been appointed, because they were all treated the same way, without distinction. Is that the phrase? Since being admitted to the bar in 1961, was it? 91. 91. Oh, 61. That's the day I entered the CSJs. That's why I got confused. Since 1991, she has been practicing primarily as a criminal defense lawyer, although she's done a few other things, like challenge the federal sentencing. She's appeared in federal courts here and other states and jurisdictions. She's also appeared in the Massachusetts courts, obviously, and she has appeared before the Supreme Court of the United States, which is a lot of experience for somebody who just started in 1991. I think two words that describe her are indefatigable and fearless. Fearless. If you watch the movie, you'll know why she's fearless. There's a scene in the movie which I love, and she's riding down Cambridge Street in Brighton. And there's Mount St. Joseph Academy. I went there. And as they say, I think you can fairly accurately say that Rosemary is one of their own. And she was touched by that charism of the dear neighbor from the beginning. She may not recognize it herself, but the way she has practiced, the way she has lived, has certainly demonstrated that the sisters who were engaged in living that charism touched other people, and they touched her. And you can tell by the dignity and the respect that she gives to everyone that she represents, and the diligence and the work that she does for them. But she's not just a lawyer. She has a family. And I don't know how you did it, to be quite frank. She has her husband is not here tonight because his mother is ill. She has 3 children. 2 of them are now in law school, and 1 of them is in medical school. She has had an amazing, amazing life. She's an amazing, amazing woman. And I think, although she has had a wonderful family, a remarkable mother in particular, that she owes some of it to the Sisters of St. Joseph, and she's the first one who will admit it. She had been educated by them at St. Columkills and at the Mount. She lived with them and worked with them and was touched by them. And that touching of her made a difference. And she, in turn, has made a difference, and she has given people hope. Please welcome Rosemary Scapiccio.
You are awesome. Thank you.
You're going to tell them about the hair?
I am.
The 20 minutes? Good.
I am. You good? You need some help?
I'll get off.
Where you go, Regina? Regina?
Judge Quinlan.
Okay, come have a picture.
Oh,
Gotta
pictures.
give you the award. No, I can do it, but we want you to, picture. Where's the photographer?
Here's the photographer. Right
Oh,
here.
there she is. We're gonna move over a little.
Should we move this way?
Yeah. Okay.
Can you also at some point get a picture of her with Judge Wall and Judge McAvoy, both of whom know her far better than I do from work in the courts. They were the 2 best criminal defense judges.
That's good.
Well, it's our honor to present this to you. I put it right on the table until you
Thank you
finish.
so much.
Have a
I
few
appreciate
words,
it.
sure.
Hi, everyone. My name is Rosemary Scapiccio, and I am honored to be here tonight. When Judge Quinlan called me, and I have to call her Judge Quinlan because my mom won't let me call her by her first name. I can't do it. I tried, I just couldn't. When she called me about it and she told me about it, I was excited to meet with her and have lunch and learn more about this award. And we ultimately did meet with Sister Kathy and Judge Quinlan, and I was able to figure out what it was all about. I did some research, and I'm just so honored that I've been selected as a recipient this year. I grew up in the projects. I was one of 7 children. My mother was a single mom in Brighton. We grew up in the Faneuil Housing Projects. My sister Kathy is here today. And it was very important for my mother that we went to a Catholic school. So all of us, and there were 7 altogether, went to St. Columkills for grades 1 through 8, and then we went to the Mount for our high school years. And we chose the Mount because Kathy decided it was where she wanted to go, and then she paved the way for everybody, and we just sort of followed along, and that's what my mother did. She said, "You're going to the Mount." And back then, it was, you could walk to school, and we had after-school jobs because we paid our own way through high school because my mom was trying to put food on the table and make sure she could pay the rent. And so it was up to us, and she instilled in us the importance of education, and she instilled in us the importance of having a Catholic education. So we were lucky enough and fortunate enough to be accepted at the Mount, and were able to really learn from the Sisters of St. Joseph from the time I was in 1st grade until I was in 12th. And Kathy went to Holy Cross, so she had another 4 years of that. But it was, to me, having that education, having that opportunity, having the assistance of the sisters made a huge impact on me. My mother was pretty strict. She told us to go to school, get A's, come home and make sure you had a job so you could pay for your tuition. And we just did it because your mother told you to do it. You didn't really have a choice. And we didn't even know there was an option of saying no to my mother because she never gave us an option to say no. And so when our report cards came and they were straight A's, she wasn't surprised. She was just, that's what you were supposed to do. And that's sort of the way that we grew up. And when I was at the Mount, I certainly knew that most of the students there had more money than I did. Most of the students there, weren't working a job after school to be able to pay for tuition. And I have this one story that just made such an impact on me when I was at the Mount, and that was that a sister by the name of Sister Honoree, who was at the Mount. She taught government, very, very good teacher. They had this trip planned to D.C., and I was dying to go to D.C. I hadn't been out of the projects. I didn't really know what D.C. was all about, but I really wanted to get on that bus. And when I found out how much it cost, it was just, I was done. There was no way that I could make my monthly tuition payment and get on the bus at the same time. And Sister Honoree saw it. She saw how much I really wanted to get on that bus. And without a word, never said a word to me at all. They were signing up for the bus and doing the parents, the permission slips. And she walked over to me and she said, "You're going to D.C." And I was like, "What?" And she said, "You're going to D.C." And I said, "Sister, what? And she said, "We're going to take care of it. Get on the bus, have your mom sign this permission slip. It's all taken care of." And I was floored by the fact that she saw the struggle in me, floored by the fact that she went out of her way to do that for me, and floored by the fact that she never, ever, not once, mentioned it again. She literally found a way, and I don't know, everyone was tight on money back then. I have no idea where she found the money. But she found it. She found a way to get me to D.C. I was in my glory in D.C. We got to go to the Supreme Court, like all of these things that happened in D.C. that had such a tremendous effect on my life. And it was all because Sister Honoree went out of her way, understood what was happening with my family, and did this thing for me. And it made me want to give back, to pay it forward, to do that for someone else. I grew up, and when I say I grew up poor, I didn't know I was poor, if you can even believe that. And so we used to collect it when I was in grammar school. We used to collect cans for the poor at Thanksgiving to make the Thanksgiving baskets. And so I remember being in probably the 3rd grade, and I remember asking my teacher, can we write messages of hope and love on the can? And the teacher said, "Sure, you can write whatever you want." So we took the markers and we decorated and drew flowers and all of that stuff. And then on Thanksgiving Day, here comes the basket, and it's my can. And I said, and I looked at my mother, I go, "Are we poor?" I had no idea. It was just life. That's what we were doing. And she looked and she said, "Yeah." And I was like, "Oh my God." So, and I go, and I think the amazing thing is she gave me the can to bring it to school because she was trying to feed 8 people. But she gave me the can ended up back in our basket, and that's how I figured out I was poor. When I figured that out, I was thinking, I always had this idea that the poor people were in Africa. They were in a different country, they weren't here. And I thought I was pretty rich. I was going to a Catholic school. I was, all my sisters were going. I had a uniform. I had something to wear. I didn't see myself as poor. But that day sort of changed everything for me when I realized that, okay, I'm living in the projects. That should have been a key. But it really wasn't. It wasn't back then. And so, what the sisters did, and just making, you realize that you give back, even when you have nothing. You give that can, you write that message, and you make a difference in someone's life. And that's essentially what the Sisters of St. Joseph did for me. And I can tell you, all of my sisters also went to St. Columkills and to the Mount. My dad actually went to St. Columkills for his education as well. So we have a long history of being involved in Catholic school, and I can tell you definitively that it's made a difference in my life. And so my journey when I graduated from high school, I went on to Suffolk undergrad, and I was just telling the people at my table that I must have changed my major about 20 times. So anyone out there that has a child that's just starting college now, don't worry. I got invited to the registrar's retirement party because I changed my major so many times. I'm not even kidding you. Every time she saw me coming, she said, "Rosemary, try another week, please." I'm like, "No, I'm done. I don't want to do that anymore." And so I graduated from Suffolk and then went to Suffolk Law, and I started nights because I had to pay for it. And as I was going nights, it was tough because I was working full-time in the day, and I was going to school at night, and it's 9:30 before you even get out of school. Then you got to take the trains home. Then you got to do homework, and I was just in a hurry. I was in a big hurry to start what I thought was the beginning of my career. So I ended up trying to figure out a way that I could work days and go to school days. And I met this lawyer by the name of Frank Kelleher. He was an old criminal defense attorney. If you knew anything about him, he was known for his paisley suits. He would wear a nice yellow or a nice pink with like these gray slacks, and everybody knew him. It was Frank. And so I was fortunate enough to be able to work for Frank while I was in law school, and he was so accommodating to me that he gave me the time to take classes in between working for him. And when I got the job for him, I was so excited. I'm like, here I am working for a real lawyer. And then one of the first jobs he had me do, he used to represent a bunch of women who had some significant addiction problems, and for the most part were prostitutes. And one of my first jobs in working for Frank was, as soon as he got them out on bail from the BMC, he would make me take them across the plaza and get them lunch. That was my job. And so I would say fine, and I would literally have this probably group of 3 or 4 or 5 women who were clearly dressed as prostitutes, and I would be walking across the plaza with them in my suit thinking I am all that. And then I would just sit, and I think just listening to them, being able to listen to them and giving them an opportunity to speak to someone who didn't want anything from them. I just wanted to buy them lunch. That's all I was doing, was buying them lunch. I think that so many of the women were so grateful to have that opportunity, and it was just Frank's way of saying, like, I can't stop them from going back on the street, but at least I can put some food in their stomach. And that sort of idea always stuck with me about sometimes you can't solve every client's problem, but if you can solve the little problem that's in front of you today, then do what you can to solve that. And so that's how I started out, taking prostitutes to lunch. And I was grateful to take the prostitutes to lunch. And the court officers all loved me because I was taking the prostitutes to lunch. So I had lots of company while I was sitting across the plaza eating lunch with these women. But the bottom line is, he showed me that everyone deserves some time and some attention. And it sort of brought me back to what I wanted to do from Sister Norena's experience, which is pay it forward. And so when I got out of law school, I knew right away that I wanted to try to help the people that were, not the people who could pay the giant bills. I didn't want to work for a big law firm. I wanted to help the people who, were from Roxbury and Dorchester and West Roxbury that didn't have a lot of money. I saw how people from the projects were treated when I was growing up, and I wanted to do something to change that. And in walks, Sean Ellis to my life. And Sean Ellis, for those of you who don't know, was convicted at age 19. He was a young black kid from Roxbury. Was convicted at age 19 of killing a police officer by the name of Detective Mulligan. And Sean had gone through 3 trials. The first 2 trials were hung juries. The third trial, he was convicted in about 4 hours. And he was dumbfounded at the idea that the justice system didn't work. And when this whole crime took place, when Detective Mulligan was killed, he actually volunteered to go to the police station to try to help them solve his cousin's murder, because his cousin had been murdered a few days earlier. And while he was at the police station, one of the police officers asked him, "What do you know about Detective Mulligan?" And Sean, because he's an honest kid, says, "I was there that night at the Walgreens." And they were just like, "What?" And he said, "I was there that night." And they said, "How can you prove it?" And he said, "If you go to my cousin's house, there's a box of diapers and a receipt. The receipt is mine. I was there." And so they stop the interview, they run to the house, the cousin's house, they find the Pampers, they find the receipt, and now they know they have their perfect suspect. So what Sean doesn't know at that time is that Detective Mulligan, Detective Acera, Detective Robinson, and Detective Brazel were all engaged in criminal activity for about 2 years prior to Detective Mulligan's death. They were executing fake search warrants, taking money from drug dealers, who, what are they going to do, report it to the police? Probably not. And then taking the drugs and putting them back out on the street. And so they knew that when Detective Mulligan was killed, that there was a good possibility if the police did an actual investigation, that they would be able to uncover their own criminal activity. So they went to work to make sure that Sean was the sole suspect and that they had what they called rock-solid evidence against Sean. So Detective Acera in particular had his girlfriend's daughter say that she saw Sean at the Walgreens that night. And when she went to, her name was Rosa Sanchez, when she went to pick out, or try to pick out Sean from a photo array, she picked out the wrong person. And went downstairs and said she was very upset. And then, according to Detective Acera and Detective Robinson, they asked her why she picked out that person, and she said she was afraid. So they didn't have her sign the array like they usually do when you pick out the wrong person. Instead, they bring her back upstairs. They take out the person who she said she was afraid of, and then they have her look at the exact same array again, and this time she picks out Sean's picture. And that's how easy it was for Sean to get arrested and charged with first-degree murder. And when Sean was arrested at his cousin's funeral, he believed with everything in his heart that the truth would come out, that this would end, that somebody would understand what happened here. And then he got arraigned and held with no bail, and the process started. And the first trial went forward. He was represented by 2 fairly good lawyers, very experienced here in Boston, and they did a great job of representing him. And they believed from the very beginning that Detective Mulligan had a lot of enemies because of some of the things he used to do when he was a police officer. For instance, he used to go to very young girls, and I won't even call them women because they were girls, and they mostly had addiction issues, and he would ask them for oral sex, and then he would promise that he would get rid of their open pending cases. And that's exactly what he did. And so he had these bunch of young women who described themselves as his, that he was dating them. And to me, it was just so bizarre that they thought that was a dating relationship. But that's the way he worked on the street. And a lot of people were unhappy about that. So in addition to his drug dealing, he was taking advantage of drug-addicted young women. And a lot of people in the police department knew it. A lot of people in the court system knew it. And his lawyers, Sean's lawyers at trial, knew it. But they couldn't prove it. They couldn't prove what was happening as far as Sean's case is concerned. So Sean went to trial the first time and couldn't make any connections with Detective Mulligan and what was going on in his life. And there was a hung jury. He went to trial a second time. Within a year, 2 murder trials in a year. It's unheard of. And there was a hung jury. And then the third time he went to trial, they were able to convict him. And when they convicted him and Sean was sentenced to life without the possibility of parole, his world just shattered. How he kept his composure, how he didn't lose his mind, being locked in a cage for 22 years for a crime he didn't commit, I don't know. And at this time, I had represented another young black kid by the name of Sean Drumgold. He had been convicted of killing a little 11-year-old girl who was on a mailbox in the middle of Roxbury. And we had just got Sean Drumgold a new trial, and that's how Sean saw me. Sean Ellis saw me on TV. And just as Judge Quinlan said, he wrote to me and said, "Rosemary, please, I need you." And I said, no, I can't do it. I'm too busy. I have too much going on. And if you didn't do it, I don't want you sitting in jail one more day than you need to. Go find another lawyer. And Sean said, nope, I will wait. And he was probably among the most patient clients that I ever had. And I finally went to the jail to see him. And I probably had an hour-long conversation with him, and I knew. I said, this is not a cop killer. This kid did not kill a cop. And he told me the story of where he was. He did not flinch from that story from the first day I met him until the day we were finally able to walk him out of jail. And I believed every word he said. And so then my job was to prove it. If Sean didn't do this, then there has to be evidence that somebody else did. And so we began digging. We filed Freedom of Information requests asking the federal court and the Boston Police Department to give us information about these dirty cops. So what happens after Sean gets convicted the first time is that Sarah, Robinson, and Brazel all get indicted for the scheme of ripping off drug dealers. Brazel becomes a cooperating witness for the government, and Sarah and Robinson are charged federally and end up pleading guilty to obstruction of justice, which was way less than what they did. And combined, they served no more than 18 months in jail. Sean was serving a life sentence. And so my job was to try to figure out how I connected their corruption to Sean's trial. And so when we did these Freedom of Information requests, we went back and forth with the Boston Police Department for about 12 years. And I threatened them and sent every letter I could think of and called them every name I could think of, and it got me nowhere. And then finally I sued them. I filed a civil suit against them saying, if I file a civil suit, they're going to have to answer my questions. They're going to have to produce documents. And so in the midst of filing the civil suit, we also filed a motion for new trial. We were able to find a woman who was approached by Sarah and Robinson right after Mulligan was killed. She believed she was one of Mulligan's girlfriends. And she said that they had talked to her about being the last person to call Mulligan. Mulligan had a conversation with her before he died. And ultimately, there was no police report regarding that. My investigator and I were able to find that woman, and she unequivocally said, these are the two guys. I can't say definitively, but she described Sarah and Robinson almost to a T. And my concern was, how did they know that he was the last one that they called? Because the phone that was Detective Mulligan's phone was wiped clean by the time that the police found it. And what actually happened, I believe, is that Kenny Sarah knew that the phone was in the car, that he took it out, he wiped it clean, and he returned it. The story from the Boston Police Department was that they searched the whole car. They indexed everything down to like a pink paperclip, and I'm not kidding, a pink paperclip. And they said they forgot to look in the console between the two front seats, and so therefore didn't see the phone. And by the time the phone got found, there was no data on the phone whatsoever, which begged the question of how did they end up going to see this woman if the phone was actually wiped clean? How would they have known that? And so we started to put those pieces together, and then we were in front of Judge Ball, eternally grateful. And I started to explain to Judge Ball, I've been after these files for like 12 years. And Judge Ball turned to the Commonwealth and said, like, why haven't you turned these over to her? Like, what's going on here? And they're saying, oh, we were trying and this and that. And so she issues an order. And overnight, these files that I've been waiting 12 years for start to appear. And I'm going through them and I'm finding out that there are all of these files of other people who wanted to kill Detective Mulligan that were never turned over to defense counsel. There were all of these internal affairs and anti-corruption files that showed that Mulligan was involved in the drug ripoffs that Sarah, Robinson, and Brazel had been indicted for. There was the connection. That's how he got connected to the entire thing. There was a federal grand jury that I was able to get my hands on that one witness who had been ripped off by Sarah, Robinson, Brazel, and Mulligan had indicated that Mulligan held a gun to his head while Sarah and Robinson went through his house. So the pieces all started to fit together to be able to prove the corruption in this case. And we filed a motion for new trial. Judge Ball granted us an evidentiary hearing. We went forward with the evidentiary hearing. We called the trial attorneys who were adamant that they didn't have any of this information about the tip line. They didn't have any of this information about the IAD files of the police officers. And ultimately, we were granted a new trial. So the day that the order comes out, and every day I'm searching to try to see if the order is coming out because you never know when it comes. And I was actually in the middle of another murder trial when this order came out. And I knew something was up because all of a sudden people started wandering into the courtroom. And the case that I was on trial with was not a very public case so that people would want to be in the courtroom. And so as the courtroom is filling, I turned to Jaleese McDonough, who was co-counsel in helping me get Sean out, and I said, something's up. I think it might be Ellis. And so typically you can't take your phone out in the middle of a murder trial. And so we're looking around and we're seeing a lot of prosecutors, we're seeing a lot of defense attorneys in the gallery, and we still don't know what's going on. So I have a job to do because I have a client that I'm representing, so I got to put it aside and figure out what's going on. So as soon as they break at 1 o'clock for lunch, we're on our phones, we're turning them on, we're trying to figure out what's going on. And I see that the decision comes out, and you just flip to the end to see what's going on, and you see motion for new trial granted, and you think, Oh, thank God. And so now I can't even leave the court because I'm still on trial. And so Jaleesa and I sit there and say, how are we going to get to Sean? Sean was still locked at MCI Norfolk. Visiting hours get over at 9 o'clock. And we weren't going to get out of the court till at least 4:30. We still had to go get our cars, drive to Norfolk, get him out of the, get him out and tell him what's all going on all before 9 o'clock. And so we have a plan. The court gets over at 4. We start scrambling for everything that we have to do. And we get on the expressway, and it's literally bumper to bumper traffic. And I'm like, seriously? So we finally get to the institution, and we don't have an appointment, and it's after hours, and they can give you a hard time just because they don't like who you are. So we waited there for a period of time, and now I'm looking at the clock, and it's after 8 o'clock, and I'm thinking, oh my God, we're not going to tell him. He's going to find out, like on the TV, on the radio, in a newspaper, like we wanted to be the ones who told him. And so finally we talk our way in. We get to the visiting room. Now, we've already been there for 45 minutes, and it's empty. And I'm like, where is he? And they say, oh, we're going to call him now. And so in state prison, what happens when your lawyer is there is they announce it over a loudspeaker that says, attorney visit for Sean Ellis. And Sean knew that Judge Ball had the decision under advisement. He knew it was 8 o'clock at night, and he knew that it was probably going to be a decision because I wouldn't be there at 8 o'clock at night under any other circumstances. And Sean was the type of kid who wouldn't keep me waiting for a nanosecond. If I was in that visiting room, he was in that visiting room. He didn't shower. He didn't go change his clothes. He didn't waste a minute of my time. And so when I hear them make the announcement, attorney visit for Sean Ellis, and we wait, and probably 20 minutes goes by, and I say to Jaleesa, something's up. Like, what's going on? This isn't him. And I don't find out till later that he did take his time that night, because in his mind, he was thinking, he knew that this was the best shot he ever had of gaining his freedom. And if Judge Ball had said no, he knew he was going to die in jail, and he didn't want that answer. And so I didn't find out till later that he actually was taking his time. I was blaming the corrections officers. I was wrong. But in any event, he comes into the room, and he's literally petrified. And I say to him, Sean, we did it. Judge Ball allowed the motion for a new trial, and he fell to his knees. And he was just... And all that motion gives him is a chance, gives him a chance to go fight again, like to stand another day, to get that second chance at life. And he couldn't have been more grateful. He was crying. He couldn't even compose himself. And so I'm trying to explain everything because I know they're going to kick me out. And I'm like, I got to just tell you what's going on, Sean. We're going to ask for bail. We're going to do this. We're going to do that. And ultimately, I walk out that night and I say, do you want to tell your mom and your sister, or do you want me to? And he's like, no, the phones are going to be off. You're going to have to call Rose. You're going to have to tell them. And I said, fine. I can do that on the way home. So ultimately, I got to tell his mom and I got to tell his sister that Judge Ball had allowed the motion for new trial, and they were screaming with joy. Everybody was happy. And then we ultimately had a bail hearing. And typically, you're not entitled to bail on a homicide case. You can be held without bail. And we were fortunate enough that Judge Ball granted us a $50,000 cash bail, which was a lot of money for Sean's family. They don't have 50 cents, never mind $50,000. But when you talk about the community, when you talk about taking care of your neighbor, what happened in that community, in Dorchester and Roxbury, on behalf of Sean was nothing short of amazing. They literally held cans at stop signs. They had extra collections at churches. They went door to door asking for donations. They had car washes. They literally raised $50,000, $5 at a time. And I'm not kidding you. That's what they did. That's how that community came around him and supported him to help him get a new chance at life. And then once he was granted the new trial, we were preparing for the fourth trial, and we were trying to follow a lot of different leads in terms of what was happening. We were able to find out that the district attorney's office and/or the Boston Police Department had paid 2 witnesses, one of them $9,000, another one $15,000 that they didn't tell us about, and they had gotten on the stand basically saying they had no interest in the case when in fact they had been paid. So things started to develop in the fourth trial, and that's when Netflix came in. And Netflix wanted to start filming, and I'm a criminal defense attorney. I said no. My client still has to face a fourth trial. It's a homicide case. I don't want you anywhere near him. I'm sorry. Thanks for the offer, but no. And Sean came to me and said, Rosemary, I think people need to know this story. Like, I think they need to know what happened to me. Whether I win or lose, I want them to know. And I said, Sean, I can't risk it. I can't risk your life. I won't do it. And ultimately, he talked me into it. And because he was adamant that he wanted people to know what happened to him. He wanted to do two things. He wanted to give hope to the people who are currently wrongfully convicted, sitting in jail anywhere, to let them know that there is hope out there, that you know, they need to keep fighting, they can't give up. And he wanted to let the community and everybody else know what happened to him. He really wanted to clear his name. It was so important to him to clear his name. And ultimately, the district attorney's office dismissed the case. Not that they told us they were dismissing the case. That was another horrible day for Sean. So I get a call from, because the district attorney's office at the time, not now, not with Rachel Rollins, but they had no professional courtesy where I was concerned at all. I get a call the morning that I ultimately learned that they were going to dismiss the case against Sean from a reporter from the Boston Globe who said, "Rosemary, something's happening in the Ellis case. What's going on?" And I said, "Nothing could be happening. I was just in court 2 days ago. I talked to the prosecutor. He didn't say a word." He said, "Nope, we got a heads up that something's happening at something about 2 o'clock today. There's going to be a press conference." And I'm like, that can't be. That absolutely, like, the prosecutor, I mean, they're jerks, but I don't think they can be this big jerks. And so I call the prosecutor. I'm on my way to Springfield on another homicide case, but I call the prosecutor and I say, "Hey, Ed, what's going on with Ellis? Is something going on with Ellis?" And he gives me there's a lot of moving parts, and let me try to nail that down, and I'll get back to you in 5 minutes. Never called me back. Never called me back. So I literally, unfortunately for him, had Netflix in the car that day, and I was calling like incessantly. And a couple of times I had to have him step out because I was leaving messages that I didn't want people to hear, because I was getting more and more frustrated with the idea that everybody knew what was going on except for me and Sean. And we were among the most important people to understand what the hell was happening. And so we find out that there's a press conference at 2 o'clock. I've made 15 calls to the DA's office. I've made 15 calls to the interim DA. No one's returning my calls. I'm getting my information from reporters who are calling me, asking me for a comment about what they think is going to happen. I find out that they have the entire police force at their press conference. They have John Mulligan's family at the press conference, so clearly they've told them what was going on. And I don't know what's happening. So I call Sean and I say, "Hey, Sean, I'm just going to be blunt here. I don't know what's happening. Something's happening on your case at 2 o'clock today. I'm not sure what it is." And he's like, "What do you mean, Rosemary? You always know." I'm like, "I don't know. I'm telling you right now, I don't know." And he's like, "What should I do?" So as the day goes on, I'm very concerned about what's happening. I don't know if they're going to announce another indictment. Like, I have no idea what's happening. And so I say to him, "You need to come into my office. We have to figure this out together." And he says, "All right." So he leaves his job and he drives into my office. And as he's driving in, he's panicked. And we're on the phone and he's saying, "Rosemary, what do you think?" I said, I don't have any idea, Sean. I have no idea what they're going to do. And so he says, do you think there's any chance that they're going to send me back to jail? And I said, I don't know. I can't promise anything, Sean. I don't have any inkling at all of what's happening. And so as he's driving in, he calls his mom. And literally in tears, he's saying goodbye to his mother, saying, "Mom, Rosemary doesn't know what's happening. If she doesn't know what's happening, it's got to be bad. And I don't know what's happening, so I just want to say that you may not see me tonight, and I'll call you as soon as I know anything." And he calls his sister and says the same thing. And so by the time he walks into my office, he's literally in tears. And he's saying, "Please find something out." And so now I'm more aggravated than ever, trying to get in touch with the DA's office, and they say nothing. So we watch on our computer the press conference that happens at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, where they make this announcement that they're going to dismiss the case against Sean. They're not going to go forward on the 4th trial. And they claim that they weren't going to go forward on the 4th trial because the witnesses' memories had been exhausted. None of that was true. They claimed that they couldn't find any of the witnesses that they needed. And my position was, it's hard to find people you're not looking for. They hadn't interviewed, there were 200 people on the tip line of people who wanted to kill Mulligan. They hadn't interviewed one of them, not one of them. I was out there, I knew where they were, but they had not. And so they made this announcement, and then the most, I think, demoralizing thing for Sean is that the Commissioner of Corrections, the Commissioner of the Boston Police Department, who doesn't know Sean, who wasn't involved in the case at all, stood up and said, "This has nothing to do with innocence. This has to do with witnesses' memories. This doesn't mean that Sean Ellis is innocent by any stretch." And Sean was just deflated. And I was pissed. And so from that point on, Sean said, "Rosemary, we have to do something to clear my name. We have to." And so ultimately, we worked really hard. We worked with Rachel Rollins. And we were able to, they never apologized to Sean. They never said that they were wrong. In fact, if you watch Trial 4, you'll see that many members of the Boston Police Department think he got away with murder despite all of the evidence to the contrary. And that's the problem. That's this sort of implicit bias that exists in the Boston Police Department that causes these types of wrongful convictions. And until we address it, it's not going to change. And so I called for an investigation. I called for a commission, because I think that there are way more Sean Ellises sitting in jail for crimes that they didn't commit. And when there's a plane crash, you know, the NTSB comes in, they find the black box, they do an investigation, and they do it all so that the public has confidence in riding those airplanes. And I think the same respect should be given to the criminal justice system, that there should be an investigation to figure out how and why this happened and who else might have been affected by it, so that we can have confidence in the criminal justice system. But that was years ago, and I'm still fighting that fight. And there hasn't been an investigation yet, and it's sad to say that I don't think that there will be. And so we're stuck now picking these cases off one at a time. And it took 22 years to free Sean Ellis. And those of you who haven't watched the documentary, I'm probably ruining the end of it, but Sean is doing fabulously well. He's worked at the same job for 7 years. He delivers food to homebound and ill individuals. They're all nutritious meals for them to have, and he absolutely loves his job. He's been promoted twice. He wants everyone to know that. Well, because they stole the most important years of his life. From 19 to 42, you know, that's when you make all the changes in life. That's when you figure out what you want to do. He didn't get out of jail till he was 42, so he's a lot of catching up to do. And so he's married now. He's in a very stable relationship. He's at the same job for the last 7 years. And in my mind, it's all thanks to Judge Ball. And so that's the story of Sean Ellis, and that's how I have taken it upon myself to try to pay forward that kindness that was shown to me at Mount St. Joseph Academy and the Sisters of St. Joseph. So the message that I want to leave everyone with is that we can all make a difference. And the Sisters of St. Joseph are the people who instilled that in me. And if I can instill that on any other person, inspire anyone to make a difference, then it's been worth it. Thank you so much.
Congratulations, Rosemary. Amazing, amazing. Is this woman a badass or what? I mean, don't get on the wrong side of this lady. Amazing, amazing woman. It's now my pleasure to bring up Sister Mary Black, who really needs no introduction. There's probably not a person in this room that does not know Sister Mary Black. Sister Mary, come on up to introduce tonight's guest speaker.
Good evening. I'm happy to be able to introduce Noel Dixon to you tonight. I've met Nolan when he was in high school. And when I was director of advancement, I taught Noel. I never taught Noel in the classroom, but I taught him, I think, by the way that I met him around school and tried to instill in him what was expected of him and what talents he had. And what appeared to me sometimes very much a seriousness of purpose that aggravated me. I got on Noel's back many times, even though I didn't teach him in a classroom. And I think it finally bore some fruit, because Noel did very well from then on. He also used to come to these breakfasts. Many people here came to those, where they told me they got stale bagels and cold coffee. But anyway, what we did, tell them about the students at Cathedral, and I always brought students in who would tell about their lives and what Cathedral was like for them. And because of that, many people got interested in the school, and supported the school and made us able to take kids who couldn't pay tuition or who could pay very little tuition and able to give them a cathedral education. And I didn't always pick the best and the brightest to go to these breakfasts either, because some of the kids had better stories. And so we tried to make a picture as true as it was to the school. And Noel was one of the people that I didn't choose as the best and the brightest, because he'll probably tell you himself, he was not always the ideal student at Cathedral. But he did imbibe what we were trying to teach him, and went on to a very successful life. And so I'm going to let you tell the rest of his story, let him tell the rest of his story. Because it really is quite amazing of what he was able to do.
Thank you, Sister Mary Black. Quite the introduction. Well, good evening, everyone, and I appreciate the opportunity to tell my story and how the sisters and Cathedral High School helped to shape my story. So at the age of 12, unfortunately, my mom passed away as a result of breast cancer. With no father in the picture, my sister Cecilia felt that she had no choice but to take custody of my two siblings and I. At the time, we lived in Academy Homes, which was notorious for violence and the illness of drug addiction. As you can imagine, this wasn't an easy time for us, and we definitely didn't make life easy for my sister. Only now do I truly understand the gravity of the sacrifice that my sister made for us, and thank God she was there for us in that very fragile time. So my sister's actually here today. I would like if you could stand up, please. I just want to, acknowledge her and just thank you, Cecilia, for your courage and the sacrifice. Just a deep thank you for what you've done for me and for our brothers and sisters. So now, not thrilled with the prospects of attending a public school in the neighborhood, my sister decided to send me to Cathedral High School. Now, the first few years, as Sister Mary described, were definitely rough. I was certainly a handful for the sisters to deal with, but, they didn't give up on me, particularly Sister Mary Black, who we all know very well. Also, I want to recognize Sister Patrice, a school sister of Notre Dame. She was very influential as well. I just want to take the time right now just to give a thank you to Sister Mary and Sister Patrice for just, and I also want to thank the faculty as well at Cathedral for their patience and their compassion for me at such an uncertain time. Now, the sisters never let up on me, and they really instilled in me the true definition of persistence. I just remember avoiding them in the hallway because I knew if they would catch me, I wouldn't hear the end of it. But in retrospect, they were giving me, the medicine that I truly needed at the time. And yes, they eventually wore me down. But most importantly, they convinced me that I wasn't working up to my fullest potential. Now, I finally gave in and decided to get them off my back once and for all, and started to actually apply myself. It wasn't until I did a research paper on economic injustice that a sort of light bulb lit up above my head. Now, writing this paper, it was a true enlightenment. It made me sort of better understand my environment and the effects of my environment, and that the fact that I didn't have to be a product of that environment. Now, I recall a quote from Martin Luther King where he says, it's a cruel jest to say to a bootless man that he ought to lift himself up by his own bootstraps. By the time I got to the end of the research paper, I realized that Cathedral High School was providing me and other students a pair of boots with the straps. Yeah, clap, please, yeah. Now, my appreciation for the school as well as the sisters obviously grew from then on, and I actually decided to apply myself. By the end of my junior year at Cathedral, thanks to the research and persistence of my guidance counselor, Nancy Lane, who's also a product of the Sisters of St. Joseph at St. Matthew's and Cathedral. You know, I was interning at Wilmer Hill during the week and working at Marshall's on the weekend. But most importantly, I was getting straight A's in all of my classes. Now, this improvement was enough for me to get into Boston College. Once the news was out that I got into Boston College, I remember Sister Mary Black meeting me in the hallway. She pulled me to the side and she said, "You know what? I knew you could do it." And that was a very touching moment because obviously she was truly there from the beginning at my most vulnerable state. So that was that, and well, I got to BC, and man, what a culture shock. I was coming from a school with about 300 students, and you know, to an undergraduate body, it was about 9,000 students, kids from all around the country, from abroad, and the most important point, my roommate was from Brooklyn, New York, so you can only imagine. I remember being in theater class and thinking to myself, like, oh man, I'm black. Where I was from, you know, everyone looked like me, but, you know, at BC, it was pretty much the inverse. Now, to my pleasant surprise, however, the BC kids were very friendly, and they were, you know, interested in me just as much as I was interested in them. Academically, you know, BC was definitely on another level, but my experience at Cathedral, you know, it taught me that I could overcome anything. I ended up having some of the best years of my life, influenced by that high school paper I wrote on economic injustice. I decided to major in finance. I had become increasingly fascinated with financial markets and wanted to understand how it all worked. During my senior year, while applying to several firms, I bumped into another Cathedral graduate, Mr. John Raimondi, who would change the course of my life in a very significant way. When I first met John at the Cathedral Adopt a Student Foundation, he was pretty laid back, you know. Never in a million years would I have known he was as accomplished as he was. And thank God I didn't know, because I probably would have made a fool of myself. You know, he nicely gave me his card, and he definitely actually followed up. So I did, you know, I went and met with him, and, you know, I just went to chat with him about some of the prospects I had. J.P. Morgan, Price Waterhouse, they seemed to be as interested in me as I was in them. But by the time I left his office, I was applying to Fidelity, and ultimately, you know, I decided to join, so, yeah. Now, John, you know, he truly helped me and mentored me. From a career standpoint, I spent the first few years in the private client group advising high net worth clients. I then transitioned over to capital markets, where I traded equities and spent the latter part of my tenure doing data analytics. Simultaneously, I was able to obtain my CFA, which gave me a designation to be a chartered financial analyst. After 10 years at Fidelity, I made the decision to join State Street's research team as a macro strategist. Now I focus on commodities, commodity currencies, and U.S. fiscal policy. This was a job that helped me to build a different set of skills. I now also serve on the board at Cathedral High School, which gives me the opportunity to give back to the school what it gave me, which includes my lovely and beautiful wife, Janae. She's also a Cathedral alum. Yeah. So overall, you know, it's been a heck of a journey, and you know, I just want to end by saying, you know, to the Sisters of St. Joseph, as well as Nancy Lane, to John Raimondi, I'm looking now, John White, Bob O'Neill, you know, thank you guys, seriously. Who knows where I would have been if it wasn't for people like you guys, seriously. Sisters, I just want to just say that I'm truly grateful for your service. You are certainly the key to success, and I am a firsthand product of what you guys have done for us. So I just want to say thank you and God bless. Thank you so much. Go Celtics.
Thank you, Noel, and thank you to your beautiful family for being here and for your great words. For most of you, as you think about the Sisters of St. Joseph, it also may bring back memories, as it did for our speaker, the sister who taught you in school. Some of you who are lucky have been able to find that these relationships continue into your adulthood, forming friendships, learning more about these women, their interests, and their lives. For all of us who love and admire the Sisters of St. Joseph, tonight you will see a glimpse into their lives, who these women are, where they've come from, and how they continue to enrich all of our lives. Please take a look.
Our journeys have evolved. We come from the neighborhoods of those we serve and are from very ordinary families. We were flower girls, celebrated our first communions, acted in plays, were drum majors, went to proms, made music, and sang our way through those 60s and 70s. We graduated from many different high schools and distinguished universities, and live lives full of joy. We are Sisters of St. Joseph.
I was what you might call a raucous child. At one point I can't remember what the incident was, but my dad had become cross with me for something. And so in order to bond with me again, he decided he was going to take me to see The Bells of St. Mary. And after I saw that movie, I was going to become Ingrid Bergman. I was going to become this wonderful sister who was strong and yet loving and patient and kind. I had the Sisters of St. Joseph for my grammar school and my high school years, and so I admired a lot of them. I was not your typical candidate, but again, God works in strange ways, and so here I am 63 years later.
Well, I first became aware that I wanted to be a sister. But at the time, basically, I probably had the Sisters of Mercy. And I think that that was the congregation I was considering. When I went to Regis, when I told the story to the sister, who said then to me, "You will not be a Sister of Mercy, you will be a Sister of St. Joseph." And I angrily got up and went upstairs and cried on my bed, knowing I would be a Sister of St. Joseph. But I didn't know I'd be a Sister of St. Joseph until I was at Regis. I think I knew it was the right piece when I was on top of that bed crying, to be very honest with you. Yeah, this is where it was always meant to be.
I think my call to religious life came from my parents. My parents were an extraordinary couple. They were very service-minded, very active in their parish community, very active in the neighborhood. I always had that model of, service and being aware of people's needs. And I think that was sort of a reason why I chose religious life, because, that was one way that I could maybe get involved in serving people.
We are educators, teachers, principals, and administrators. We are spiritual leaders and support campus ministries. We are board members and trustees and continue to roll up our sleeves and serve wherever there is a need, even in unexpected and creative moments. We respond to an ever-widening circle of inclusive love by serving our dear neighbor without distinction in the United States and abroad.
service to the dear neighbor without distinction means we don't hold back. This unifying love is God's desire for all of us, and it's our desire for all people also. So if we have an opportunity to help somebody in any way at all, and we can respond to that, I think that's what it's all about.
Sister Maureen Doherty, like many of the Sisters of St. Joseph, is a lifelong educator. She still has a daily presence at St. Joseph's Prep in Brighton.
When I get up in the morning, I never know what my day is going to bring as far as the prep is concerned. As Director of Mission Integration, I do represent the Sisters of St. Joseph while I'm at the prep. And they know that. They know the core values of the Sisters of St. Joseph. They know God charism is service to the dear neighbor because they speak of that a lot. So it's, again, wherever the need is, if I can bring unifying love wherever I am. So I used to look at the students and say, I have no idea what they're going through outside of this classroom. So if I can bring them any joy as I'm educating them, that would be my gift.
In her years teaching chemistry, Sister Marie-Therese Martin has touched the lives of many doctors and nurses in Boston's medical community. But that is just a part of her mission of unifying love, which has carried her everywhere, from Worcester, Nicaragua, Kenya, and currently as a source of comfort to the elderly.
I heard somebody play the harp when I was a chaplain at a nursing home, and we had a designated dementia floor. Those folks sat for 45 minutes, and not a one of them budged. And that was when I said, a harp, here I come. And how basically the ministry that I did with the harp came from that, because somehow it touched every dear neighbor on that floor.
When the community of the Sisters of St. Joseph saw a need for volunteers in Peru, Sister Carlotta Gelati responded to the need to help her dear neighbor. 27 years later, she had taught teachers to teach religion and helped people whose lives had been uprooted by terrorists. Later experiences found her in Nicaragua, where she volunteered with surgical cardiac patients, visited El Salvador to commemorate the 35th anniversary of the sisters who had been martyred there, and served most recently as a chaplain at Children's Hospital.
I feel like my life is a mosaic. It's made up of so many pieces. I was in Peru for 27 years. And I think the one thing that was exciting was that the people became my teachers. I mean, the longer you are in a place, the less you know, because every day you're being taught something. You never get used to the poverty, but learn some values. You know, this whole value of to be is more important than to have. The community asked for volunteers. There was a need, so I responded to the need. I had my neighbors, and we gathered together also every week. We had Mass in my home. Mi casa es tu casa. I mean, it just means that I'm going to share my whole life with you.
As ordinary women, rooted in the gospel, we have continued to do things in extraordinary ways, promoting the Church's social justice teaching, supporting the homeless and those who have been marginalized, advocating for survivors of human trafficking, supporting those who are new to our country and seek citizenship, seeking to end racial injustice, contemplating and proclaiming the presence of God in the whole of creation. And we promote justice, equity, diversity, and inclusion so that all may live with dignity and respect. We continue to serve our dear neighbor during these times of pandemic and global and political unrest, during the times when more than ever we all want to feel connected, to feel part of something special. Our journey continues to unfold.
When I think about the future, I can't even imagine what it's going to be like. But I do know that what the Sisters of St. Joseph have shared throughout these years here in the Boston and beyond will still be visible in the people whose hearts and lives we've touched. That we talk about ever-widening circles, and that's what we're all about. And I'm so very grateful for our partners in ministry, and also the fact that if we had not had generous donors throughout these years, we would not be able to do some of these things.
I just want to say thank you for your continued response to us as a group of women who are choosing the ministries and the work we do. Thank you very much.
The donors, they have to know that this should be on their resume. Every single thing I've done, I always thought of our donors. You know, they're a piece of this mosaic in my life because so much of what I did, they were there with me, because if it wasn't for them, there were some ministries that we just could not do.
On behalf of all the sisters,
Thank you for your gifts and your prayers.
Thank you so much for your constant support. You are our partner in mission.
Well done, well done. I think Netflix ought to follow you ladies around next, all right? Let's see if we can hook them up, okay? All right, well, many of you have had the pleasure of knowing Sister Gail over the years and have seen her work her magic here at this event. Stay right in your seats, okay? No one's getting out of here right now. She was the principal for 32 years and then a guidance director at the St. John Paul II Academy, and you're gonna discover the rest of her gifts. All right, you're up. All right, let's go. They got to barricade the doors. Come on. Take it away.
Now, don't you know how proud I am to be able to say to you, I am a Sister of St. Joseph of Boston. I'm like Zacchaeus. You have heard this evening all the wonderful things about the Sisters of St. Joseph, all the times that we help people. And I am privileged to be able to still minister after being a Sister of St. Joseph for 65 years. And there are women in the Sisters of St. Joseph, women in this room, who can boast of even more years of service. I minister at St. John Paul Catholic Academy, and the other day I went into a classroom, and when we talk about the heritage of what the Sisters of St. Joseph do, and you've seen it and you've witnessed it this evening, I was sitting to tell the children a story. And this little kid says to me, "Are you old?" I said, "Yes, I am." I said, "Why do you know I'm old?" He said, "Because you have white hair." I said, "You're so smart." And the little kid behind him, pre-K, says, "And you have wrinkles." The Sisters of St. Joseph may have wrinkles, but we still are women that want to carry on our legacy. And so as the Sister Carlotta and Marie Trace and Maureen just thanked you, I'm up here to thank you as well. But I also know that maybe you might want to help us continue our ministry. And so there is a method, and it's new. When I stood up here before, I used to say, just look at on your table and you'll see a card, and you might want to exercise your fingers, and you might want to pick up the card and put your name there and maybe give us a little more donation and gifts to be able to continue our ministry. But now, of course, we have technology. And so, if you would like to see the Sisters of St. Joseph go beyond 150 years, then I'm inviting you, or maybe you can tell people when you leave here, that we would like to continue our work here in Boston. And in order to do that, there is a new method, and I think it's going to be on the screen. So if you would like to memorize that code, we would appreciate and thank you again for your generosity. But in all seriousness, if something is of God, it's going to continue. And when our foundress, Mother St. John Fontbonne, sent the sisters to Boston, to the United States, and we came to Boston, those sisters started with something little, and it was just like the Lord said, it mushroomed. And we've mushroomed into a wonderful group of women who follow God's message every single day through our patron, St. Joseph. One of the wonderful things that we do as Sisters of St. Joseph is pray for all those that we minister with, that we accompany, and that we are indebted to, and you are this group. In our life, we have times where we make profession, we celebrate one another through the Feast of St. Joseph, and we also send our women to their heavenly reward because of all the service that they did. And one of the ways we do this is we have a special hymn to St. Joseph. We'd like to dedicate that hymn to you this evening, to express our gratitude, to express our partnership with you, and to express the giftedness that we have because you journey with us as we go each day into the city of Boston and beyond, carrying God's message that they're loved, cared for, and no matter what, God is with them. And so I'd like to invite the Sisters of St. Joseph of Boston, my sisters, to please stand and lead us in our hymn to St. Joseph. Sancte Joseph, Sancte Joseph, Sancte Joseph, ora pro nobis, nunc et in hora mortis, nunc et in hora mortis, Sancte Joseph, ora pro nobis. Know that, thank you. And one more thing, know that the Sisters of St. Joseph will be going to bed tonight, and on their lips will be a prayer for each one of you. God bless you.
Thank you, Sister Gail. And by the way, there are cards on the table, so if you didn't get the text to give, you can do the cards on the table, and we would appreciate it. All right, thanks, everyone. It was so nice to be with all of you tonight. And as you've heard, next year is a very big year for the Sisters of St. Joseph. So if you've got your phone out to text to give, also put this date in your calendar. It'll be April 24th, 2023, where we'll be celebrating 150 years of the Sisters of St. Joseph right here in Boston. So you won't want to miss it. Save the date. We look forward to seeing you. Until then, stay safe, stay healthy, and have some fun. We all deserve it. Thanks, everybody.